Hey, it's Marina, travel experta, and today we're going to be talking about having kids in Guatemala, the actual birthing of kids in Guatemala. Are you guys ready for an adventure? Let's begin. I gave birth to my second son in Guatemala, and it was an absolute joy. So here's the thing. Having a child in Guatemala, because we are on the America side, if you are not at all Guatemalan, have nothing to do with Guatemala, and have your child in Guatemala, they automatically become a citizen of Guatemala. And if you want to live in Guatemala and become a resident, this is your anchor. This is how you could do it. So that is obviously a legal process that you will have to go through once your child is born, but that definitely helped a lot of people I know become residents in Guatemala because they wanted to stay in Guatemala. But let's talk about the actual birthing process of having your child in Guatemala. I cannot even stress the joy of having your child in these countries. Okay, my first son was born in Costa Rica. It was an absolute joy, but I'm going to be focusing on having my second child in Guatemala. There are fantastic, incredible hospitals in Guatemala. We are going to be focusing on the private healthcare of Guatemala. If you want to do public, I honestly don't have any experience with that, so I cannot give you any reference. We will be focusing on the private hospital care. I have an entire episode on healthcare in Guatemala, which completely outdoes US hospitals. Okay, I cannot talk about European ones. Obviously, European, Canadian, they have their own benefits, but we're going to be talking about Guatemala healthcare, and I can tell you right now, way better than ever in the US. So, having that, and make sure you check out that podcast because I talk a lot about all the different healthcare systems and providers and services of Guatemala in that episode. But we're going to focus about natal care and birth in Guatemala. So we live in Antigua. We use the hospital here in Antigua. I personally would recommend going to Guatemala City. Guatemala City has several fantastic private hospitals and they have packages, right? They actually have packages for births. It depends on how you're going to do it. You're going to do natural, you're going to do cesareans. They have different ones and they all start very much from the same 2 to 3 to 4 days. Obviously, if you have any issues with your child when they are born, um, that is a whole other thing, but you want to be in that case just in case for that. So when I gave birth in Antigua, we used Hermano Pedro Hospital. I honestly would not do that again today, knowing what I know now, but it was a great experience. I mean, I even hired my own private nurse that stayed with me for 36 hours and I paid extra, and it was amazing. The price was great. I did not have insurance for natal. You can use that. It depends on your health insurance because we weren't expecting to have a child. By the time I got pregnant, I wasn't able to sign up with any insurances for that. So if you are preparing to have a child, there are many incredible health insurances, and it could be international and whatnot, that are accepted all over the country. And then you could just use that, right? Obviously, it helps. But if not, it's still super affordable, right? I mean, I gave birth almost 13 years ago, and we paid $1,500, including the private nurse that I hired. Today, obviously, the prices are a little bit more, but I do know in Guatemala City, if you do not have insurance, and I'm not talking about your gynecologist. So your gynecologist, you will choose your own gynecologist. There are incredible amounts. And even if you don't have health insurance, so let's pretend you don't have health insurance, right? Because a lot of people come here and they don't because it's still so much cheaper than it will ever be in the US. But if you are European, it might be a little bit more expensive. Still, let's say for this episode's sake, you don't have health insurance. I pay for my gynecologist today $80, and that includes the pap smear and so much more. Natal care you will not be paying that much more. And I have a lot of ultrasounds that I do simply because for, you could do ovarian ultrasounds, breast ultrasounds, and I pay $50 for each ultrasound, right? And it's the same exact price for if you have a pregnancy. They do charge a little bit more if you want to do a 4D ultrasound, but not more than $100 each time. How many are you going to do during your entire natal care, saying that your pregnancy is normal? I'm not going to go into a complication pregnancy, right? That is a whole other thing. So again, you're not talking that much more. Now, for the Guatemala City packages in the best hospitals, and there are three really good hospitals, which I mentioned in the healthcare podcast, and I'm just going to say them really fast. Centro Médico, El Pilar, and Herrera y Arende, okay? They all offer, and they are all very competitively priced, between $3,000 to $7,000, depending if you want the presidential suite. And yes, they do have those. They're incredible, with separate rooms for your husband or family to stay in, or they have just the regular private rooms, which is what we've always been in, and they have beautiful beds for your husband or your mother or father or whatever, whoever is there with you, to stay, which includes 3 meals a day, comfortable, whatnot. And what does that include? So what do I say, between $3,000 to $6,000 or $7,000? Depends if you're going to do natural or if you're going to do cesarean, right? Because cesarean includes a lot more. You need an operating room. That includes your gynecologist, a pediatrician, an anesthesiologist, and all these other extras that you will need, right? So let's say you go with the most expensive one, which is this presidential suite, and that's fun. If you can afford that, hey, why not? You get to be there for 2, 3 days. You get round the clock care. I mean, this is fantastic, right? And the hospitals are all top of the line. So you really do get really fantastic care. Now, if you are in Lake Atitlan, they do have private hospitals there. There are other smaller private hospitals that are really fantastic. And again, those packages are between $2,000 to $3,000. And when I say packages, they usually include all of the above. Okay. So this is something that you need to look into. You do need to have that worked out beforehand. If you do natural childbirth, I know a lot of people actually come from Lake Atitlan and other areas to Guatemala City, and they stay in Airbnbs beforehand or in Antigua and then travel to Guatemala City. And if you have a planned cesarean, I personally had 2 cesareans. There's no judgment here. You decide what you want. I chose that because this way my mother was able to fly in. It was just much more. I was fine with it, right? And it was great. Everything worked out well, and that could help if you are living far away, and with natural childbirth, it could be a little bit complicated. Why? The traffic, guys. The traffic here, it's real. And you could be stuck in traffic for 2 to 3 hours, and you really don't want that. So if you're going to be doing natural childbirth, it's probably easier to get an Airbnb near the hospital, and this way you're right there, right? So just have that in mind before having your baby. Okay, so if you have any other questions, I am happy to help. Go to travelexperta.com, travel expert with an A.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave me a review and make sure to share it with your friends. And remember to make every day an adventure.